You're wrong. You are wrong. You are absolutely wrong. Everyone's wrong. Everyone's wrong in their own ways, right? Uh, everyone's crazy and everyone's insane because this is a bunch of stuff, right? I am looking at stuff. I'm talking to a computer. I am constantly interacting with this stuff and sort of making patterns out of it, right? I say this is a table and this is a computer when really it's just a bunch of atoms and I'm crazy and hallucinating these sort of patterns onto them. And I think people don't realize that as enough as they should because, you know, they sort of choose to impose their own, you know, everyone sort of lives their life imposing reality onto these things, right? We say this is a table and this is a computer and that's objective truth. I am objectively being true here, right? And that's just it's not wrong, but it's also not completely right, right? And sort of my first, you know, the foundation of all my ideas is that objective reality is false. The only objective truth is there is no objective truth. Everything is always subjective. Every piece of information, every piece of every pattern we see in reality, everything we view in our lives, it's all a subjective experience of things, right? And I don't think, you know, and people don't realize that. They just sort of they assume that they are right always. They say, you know, they sort of they impose, they say I am right and everything else is wrong and I need to make everything else right, you know, because they start with this idea that I am objectively true and then things don't sort of shape to their will and so they say, well, then it is my duty as someone with a subjective with an objective opinion to spread my opinion and to make people aware of my opinion and it's the best opinion so I am true and it's so flawed and malleable because the moment that they're challenged with these things, you know, they are they crumple. Their ideas crumple because deep down everything is subjective. And so they say, you know, this computer is real. This computer is a computer and that's an objective fact. Well, you know, ship Theseus, you could take him. How many atoms does it take to make it not longer a computer, right? And you know, sort of philosophical opinions like the ship of Theseus and, you know, all of that jazz sort of, you know, shows how crazy we are. We're all crazy. In some sense, we are always making stuff up. We are always imposing, you know, order onto these things. And, you know, and, you know, we impose words. We say this is a table. We match words to, you know, patterns and all that stuff, and we're crazy for it. And but everyone has to be crazy, right? You couldn't live your life if in some sense you didn't have a way of understanding reality through some lens of perspective, right? And so I think the foundation of my ideas is that, you know, the only truth is the only objective truth is there is no truth. And how do we take these sort of opinions and falsehoods that we believe in, and, you know, adapt them into something usable, and try to not only understand our perspective, but other people's perspectives and everything's perspectives, because everything is sort of wrong, or compared to us, but really they're just as right as us. We just decided because we're the first person, or we're the thing that we are, we assume that we're outside of reality and we are an objective observer when we aren't. We are in reality, and you know, it's interesting. It's interesting, and these people, I think that's what causes the sort of crisis of meaning in modern society, because we live in a surveillance state. We live in this objective world, right? We live in this world where things are in this strict order of information and digitized, and things are, ideas, even our most basic ones, are being constantly manipulated to sort of fit this narrative that, you know, corporations and those in power want to manipulate it to, right? You know, because the computer and the internet as a whole is sort of this machine which takes a bunch of opinions, right? A bunch of ideas, subjective sort of worldviews, and it sort of crafts this objective sort of, here's what the algorithm is going to tell you is true. Even if that's different for different people, right? It's not the same, but it's still imposing a sort of reality upon you. It's just unique to every person, and it's this sort of um, you know, this feedback loop of, you know, I get information, and, you know, I'm going to change my worldview to make that, and then my computer is going to, you know, all these things, and it's sort of designed to screw us over, right? To manipulate us to consume, right? Consume media and food and, you know, whatever, right? Be obedient little consumers for the machine. And that's good. That, you know, it's good to some people, you know, saying that consumerism is good. You know, the goal of society is to sort of create um, these cycles, I guess, of consumption and information and stuff. And it's, to a very select few of people, it's good, but to the majority of people, honestly, it's very, very bad. It sort of causes everyone to lose meaning and touch with themselves, because, you know, they try to fill this hole that reality has for meaning. They say the meaning is consumption, right? That's what we've been taught. You know, you buy a car, you live this sort of American dream of consumption, and that's all that matters, and you should be happy consuming, and, you know, creating sort of order through consumption and labor and consumption and work and consumption, right? And it's all to make numbers go up, and, you know, higher GDP, higher economic states, higher value, you know. But then to the consumer, who is being sort of pushed into this role of, you know, working endlessly, consuming, and then hungering more for consumption, and being pushed, you know, society is being crushed and pulled away from each other. It's good. It's good to, you know, it's good to to realize that, you know, it's awful what they're doing to us, right? You know, we're it's good to, how do I say this? It's like we're stuck in the cycle of good, right? It's all good. It's good always. But nothing is meaningful. You know, nothing is important. Nothing is really meaningful or good to us. It's good for the machine, right? That's pumping out value as they've defined it, you know. But we are losing ourselves, right? We're sort of being replaced by these thinking machines which just produce capital, right? That's sort of the ideal of consumerism, is that we buy goods and services and we move them and we create as much labor or work as possible. And I think that will always result in people being, you know, sad, depressed under capitalism, not only because of the horrible things that it causes for, you know, and the horrible subjugation that it is to be a consumer, but because it's, even though it's good for the system, it's bad for us. It is bad. We are being used as tools to create more capital for, you know, whatever billionaire oligarchy we live in, right? And it's sort of interesting to realize that, you know, this is all, we're all crazy in this society because we're, you know, we've been fed this sort of insane lie that everyone is the same and everyone is the thinking machine and there is objective reality, and objective reality wants you to work and produce and create capital. And it's foolish. It's crazy. It's insane that we're built this way, or we're being, that, you know, we're sort of built up to be these things by, you know, the government, people who sort of educate us and fix us into these worldviews. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy. And so I think that's sort of where my ideas sort of start, which is that there is no objective reality, and because of that, you know, people are realizing that the objective reality that we're given isn't meaningful at all to them personally, and not fulfilling, and we have a crisis of meaning, right? We have this crisis of people being like, oh shoot, I don't have meaning in my life, I just consume, right? And that's not meaning, that's bad. I don't like consumption. Even if it's good to the machine, it's bad to us. And that's sort of where my thesis comes in, which I'll elaborate on in later videos, which is that, you know, we need to fill this hole with other things. We need to realize where these philosophical roots come from, of this objective reality being imposed onto us from other people, subjective realities, and sort of learn to break away from that system, I think is good. Yeah.